So, welcome everyone. My name is Tobias Lejczyk. I'm from SAP. I'm working in security consulting. Have been working there for the last 7 or 8 years, dealing mostly with all this fun technical security stuff. So basically anything that the people from identity management, authorizations, risk and compliance, everything that they don't want to do, that lands on my desk. And I have to deal, or I'm allowed to deal with all the fun stuff. And especially with all, to some capacity, also with the move to S4. From a general setup of this session, we have 45 minutes. I'll try to get through my presentation in about, let's say, 20 to 25 minutes, so that in the end we have a lot of time to dig deeper into the different topics. I can give this talk also in 90 minutes, so that one works as well. So there is more content. However, I thought let's go for a short input, and then dig deeper into the topics that are of interest to you, into the things that are open questions for you. So just take advantage of this and get any questions that you have out there. All right, quick disclaimer. Okay, so regarding security, the thing that I've learned over the years in security is a little idiom that just says you have to know something before you can secure it. So before you start securing anything, well, you should know how it actually works, because then you know where to look for security measures, where to put your security measures in. And so when I first came to this whole S4 world, it was, as always, during a customer project, and someone said, "Hey, we're doing S4. Tobias, can you do the security stuff?" And well, I had a look at it, and the first thing that I did, and as you should always do, is had a look at, okay, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about S4? And so we're going to spend a few minutes on the S4 HANA architecture. So basically the question, what is it that we're dealing with? And then we're going to dive a little bit into, okay, what are the questions that we need to address? What are the topics that come up? And so let's start with the HANA architecture. And the first and most important thing is, don't panic, especially if you've been an SAP administrator or a security administrator for a while. There will be a lot of stuff that might be quite familiar to you. Even though everything is new and different, well, some things aren't new and different. So what is S4 HANA? S4 HANA actually is an application. And this was one of the most important realizations for me. When we're talking about S4 HANA, we're talking about a new application. So it affects the application layer quite a lot. It affects processes within the company and stuff like that. But in the end, it's an application. And from my perspective as a technical guy, as a system administrator, as a technical security administrator, the big question is always, okay, this application needs something to run on. And that's the biggest question for me. So what's it running on? And well, it's an application server, a NetWeaver AS ABAP. This is just an application server ABAP. It looks like an AS ABAP. It has the processes as an AS ABAP. It is configured as an AS ABAP. So if you have ever configured anything in an AS ABAP, well, that stuff is still valid, and we still have profile parameters, we still have configurations, we still have customizations. It's just an application on an AS ABAP. And as one would expect with an S4 HANA system, we have a database down below, an SAP HANA database. So when we're looking at this, it's usually like, okay, this is something I can get behind, because the difference to before, yeah, it's a new NetWeaver ABAP version, and there's new stuff that is there, and oh yeah, it's maybe a different HANA, different database for you, depending on what your database landscape looks like. But in the end, this is something that looks rather familiar. So why is this such a big deal? And the interesting thing comes in when we're talking about the periphery. So what's around all this S4 HANA stuff? And the first thing that oftentimes pops up, it's a little bit different nowadays. depending on your architectural setup, is that we have some sort of gateway system. In the olden days, it was a central SAP Fiori gateway, which was again an application server ABAP that was basically hosting the front end, and all the backend component, all the business logic was residing in the S4 system. And you had this split between a front end server and a backend server. Nowadays, oftentimes it's an integrated front end server within the S4 HANA system. However, you still might have some sort of front end server in the front of it to get your Fiori launchpad centralized and stuff like that. This I just put it in here into two different systems just to show some of the things that appear and that come up during this project. And the first and the most important thing is you have usually a web dispatcher in front of that front end system, and the main access to the system is happening via the browser. A few years back, when I was starting in this area, I was at a project. It was like 7 or 8 years ago, and we were talking about fencing of NetWeaver AS ABAP systems. And we're talking about, yeah, if you fence such a system, you need to be aware of DIAC protocol for SAP GUI. You need to be aware of RFC connections to other systems. And then someone mentioned HTTP. And one of the basis administrators actually chuckled and said, "Hey, this is an AS ABAP. Why are you talking about HTTP?" And to some extent, this was the feeling all along. Yeah, we have this ICM and we have some web services, and some people are doing this REST and SOA, and oh, they are doing some crazy stuff there. But in the end, well, yeah, we have some HTTP, but this is just a niche topic. With S/4HANA, the main access for your users is via the browser. The main interfaces are exposed to the user via the browser. So with this, all the glorious stuff that comes in with HTTP communication suddenly affects you. And it's not like in the olden days, you could say, yeah, my users are on my application via SAP GUI. And if you had any trouble there with the access to the application server, it was usually, yeah, just open up the customer message with SAP. They are responsible for the SAP GUI. They are responsible for the protocol. They are responsible for the backend. They have to figure it out. Nowadays, yeah, the SAP is responsible for the NetWeaver AS ABAP behaving in a compliant manner. But the communication is handled by the HTTP protocol. That one's specified by the IETF in different RFCs. Oh yeah, those are different RFCs than the RFC connections that we have between our application server as ABAP, stuff like that. So it's not remote function call, but it's rather request for comments. And those one basically are the specification of the internet as we know it today. And so suddenly all this external information specification comes into play in our accesses of the users to the system. And also the whole configuration and implementation within browsers. If Google or Mozilla decides to implement something different, for example, like was last year or 2 years ago, they decided to change some implementation regarding the acceptance of cookies for different domains. This runs under the notation of same-site cookies, third-party cookies. And they decided to implement something different. And suddenly this broke several scenarios. Not because something that we as SAP implemented within our backends was suddenly different, or the specification was suddenly different, but rather the browser manufacturers decided they should behave differently. And so you have different areas and with different companies that you're dealing with, where you have to check things that you rely upon for this scenario to work. And especially, you now have the majority of your users on your backend coming in via HTTP. And not only that, you have something like a web dispatcher in front of the Fiori gateway, in front of the front end system, But suddenly you also have these things where you have different systems attached to a singular reverse proxy, to a single web dispatcher, and you route the traffic to different backend systems. And this is usually more or less transparent to the user. I've had customers and customer implementations where we had like 5 or 6 different systems behind one reverse proxy, behind one web dispatcher. And if you then get a pop-up that says, please give me your username and password, well, you have to know quite well how the routing is done to actually put in the right password for the right backend system. So single sign-on is a topic that is a really, really big topic within these S4 projects, just due to the fact that you have usually multiple different systems that are integrated behind one reverse proxy. The other thing that we see coming in is we have our HANA cockpit, the HANA cockpit 2.0 for the management of the S4HANA databases. And I don't know if you have this one already in your environment, but the interesting thing is that this is based on an XSA server, an HANA Extended Application Services Advanced Model, full name. This is a Cloud Foundry-based microservices environment. Right. This again was something that I was at a customer and they said, hey, Tobias, we installed a HANA cockpit and we want you to secure it. Can you do it? And they set me in front of the console and I did what every administrator does when he sits in front of a new system. Okay, let's have a look at it. And I did the listing of the processes, and this was quite confusing to me. I'm used to getting like a long list of this plus work processes that are running, and I know, okay, I'm on an AS ABAP. Or I'm getting into an AS Java, and there's like 2 JStart processes and several other management processes that I see, but that's more or less it. And suddenly I got a list of like 20 processes, and some of them were familiar to me, like there was a web dispatcher, but suddenly there was also some sort of node process that I knew from Node.js, JavaScript stuff. And there was some Java processes running. There was some C processes, just basic web servers running. Well, this is a microservices architecture, and there are a lot of different applications running within this one application, and they are routed to different applications via some router that is integrated. And so this one is a different architecture. And so you still have something in your environment that's coming in with a different architecture that you have to get familiar with. Okay, how do I do the standard stuff that I'm doing everywhere else? For example, if we're talking about encrypted connections, how can I encrypt connections within my my XSA, within my HANA cockpit? And so you have to make yourself familiar. So this is really something of a new architecture that is coming in. And the other thing that's also oftentimes coming in with S4HANA projects is the topic of network zoning, and especially exposing the systems to the internet. Whenever I talk to customers about exposing the SAP GUI to the internet, it usually takes me about 10 minutes, and then everyone is afraid enough to not expose anything SAP GUI related to the open internet. But with browsers and HTTP communication, yeah, we're familiar with that. And it would be great if we could have this functionality that we have in our S4 system. And, oh yeah, we want to do our, to acknowledge some invoices. We want to book our leave requests and all this kind of stuff. This is something that we should be able to do from home, especially now in our world where we are almost like 100% working from home. Well, how can you expose this stuff into the open internet? And so this is also a topic that is coming along oftentimes when we're talking about an S4 project. And in this scenario, the question that I always get is, hey, Tobias, you did put the front-end server and the DMZ, shouldn't it be in the backend system? This is not not an architecture that says, yeah, this is the way you should do it or it must be done, but it's rather just to give you a hint of, okay, this is a topic that comes up and there are decisions to be made. And some people decide to have a front-end server in the DMZ, others decide to put it into the backend zone, others decide to have like a 3-tier DMZ. And so there's a lot of different architectural specifics that are not on this slide, but it's just to, yeah, this is a topic that is coming along. A topic that I would like to go a little bit more into detail about is this whole topic of HTTP. This is a topic that is usually not that familiar to us as basis administrators, as security administrators, but it's a topic that is gaining more and more relevance within our system. And so I wanted to give you a quick overview of different topics that you usually that you should be aware of, that you should know. Okay, the first thing that you should definitely know about is the HTTP protocol itself. So it is always good to know, okay, how is the HTTP protocol working? Okay, this is a request and response message type of protocol. The protocol in itself has some readable headers where you have the path, you have the method. What are the different return codes that you'll get when a request is answered? Those are really rather simple. You have 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. 100 say, please wait. 200 is everything in 200 is everything's okay. Everything in the 300s is please go somewhere else. Everything in the 400s is you're stupid. Everything in the 500s is I'm stupid. That's basically the HTTP return codes, and then there's some specifics. Basically, the most well-known 404 is basically you're asking me questions that are stupid, not found. So you're asking me for something that is not there, which is not a good question. Or another very famous one, the return code 418, I am a teapot, which is actually part of the RFC specifications, which might give you an indication of how fun it is to read those. It's really good. You definitely should check these out. The second thing that I found really helpful is the RFC 6265 about HTTP state mechanisms. If you ever have the chance, please take the time to read this. So for example, this evening when you're going to bed, then just remember, oh, Tobias said something about RFC 6265, and just read it as a nighttime lecture. This is really great. HTTP state mechanisms are mostly known under their other pseudonym, namely cookies. And this thing tells you how cookies actually work. Where are they coming from? How are they saved? When are they sent? When are they overwritten? And all this kind of stuff. And I cannot tell you, and I cannot stress enough how many times this knowledge really saved me with a customer, because there was some cookie that was overwritten, some cookie that was not sent, something that needed to be reconfigured to being sent to the right address and to be routed to the right point of, to the right recipient, all this kind of stuff. This RFC alone saved me so many times. So I just cannot recommend it highly enough. And in addition, it is really short. You can read it rather quickly. You understand, okay, how is such a specification written? What does it look like? Really great thing. Go ahead, go after the session, go to the IETF homepage and read this RFC. Really helps a lot. The next thing that comes in with HTTP is the whole thing about reverse proxies. For example, one of those reverse proxies could be an SAP web dispatcher. Those are used, for example, for load balancing, so to distribute the load over different application servers, giving you a single point of entry to a specific system. So you have this, like, any user comes in through this gate, and this is the port where the user arrives and then is handed over to the system. But they also have some sort of networking capability, some sort of networking functionality. For example, routing, sending a request to the right system, filtering, filter out requests that are not wanted. For example, if you have some system that you are exposing into the open internet, administrative interfaces must or there's no need to reach those from the open internet usually. So if you have a NetWeaver as Java, the NWA, why would you expose it to the open internet? It's sufficient if your administrators can reach it from the internal network. So filtering is one of these things. And some sort of high availability if you have multiple systems. One thing that the web dispatcher also can do in conjunction with the product SAP single sign-on is some sort of pre-authentication, which basically is the user arriving and having a request to some backend system, and the web dispatcher already says, you are not authenticated, please go somewhere, authenticate yourself. And when the user then is authenticated, then the web dispatcher forwards the request to the right backend system. So an authentication before the request reaches the backend. Next topic that you should be familiar with is the whole topic of transport layer security, TLS. So the whole topic of managing certificates, what are root certificates, how are certificates trusted, how are they renewed, and all these fun topics. Then we have the topics of authentication, which currently are mostly SAML, SPNIGO, and X509. OIDC, so OpenID Connect, is coming around, but also these are the main authentication topics or authentication methods at the moment, and those are the ones that you should be familiar with, at least the ones that are implemented within your project. And then last but not least, we have a fun thing, namely HTTP exploits. There are a lot of different things that can go wrong with HTTP. And being aware of these helps you to know what to configure and why you configure some stuff. And learning about HTTP exploits is oftentimes really fun. If you ever have the chance to attend something like a CTF, so a capture the flag event, this is really, really fun. This is just playing around with exploits. A CTF is basically a game where you get a vulnerable system, and if you exploit the vulnerability, you'll get back a flag, which is just basically a code that you can enter on some sort of platform, and then you'll get points. This game is addictive. So this is really, really fun to really have the hands on. The experience, you know, in the end, okay, this is really how such an exploit works, which is always really, really good. And the people who are doing these are usually really nice. So you learn a lot of stuff. It's helpful for your work and it's fun. So this is something that's really, 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 really great. Okay, so in conclusion, so where are we at when we're talking about an S/4HANA project? So some things are actually old. Few of the topics that come up are really new topics. So if you have some sort of NetWeaver as ABAP security concept already in place, if you have security measurements in place for network traffic and zoning, well, those are still valid with an S/4HANA project because it still is an AS ABAP that's standing in your basement, basically. So many of the topics are well known. However, what's the big chance with an S/4HANA project is we now have the chance to actually address it. I don't know what your situation in your company is, but I've been in a lot of situations where I was asked, "Hey, Tobias, can you please explain us how this and that security configuration is done?" And I told them, "Yeah, I can do that." And we talked about it. And then someone said, "Yeah, and now we have to convince someone that this is actually something that we should do. And then we have to sign something with our blood that says, yeah, I'm not going to destroy anything if I configure this in a secure manner," and all this kind of stuff. An S/4HANA project, since it is an application layer project, is already a big disruption to the whole company, or to the different departments, to the different systems. And usually S/4HANA systems are created anew from scratch. So you have the chance from the very beginning to say, yeah, please involve me, I'm here, let's go for a secure configuration right from the start. I sat in one S/4HANA project where we really had some project manager who said, yeah, the great thing about security is that you can do it as the cherry on top at the very end. We had two security guys in the room, and we both looked at each other. We were actually right before that we were talking and discussing some other stuff, and we're oftentimes we had a different opinion. But in this case, we just looked at each other and we both raised our hands. And, yeah, that's not such a good idea. Well, this way, since it's already a disruption, you have the chance to get in the whole security configuration to really start with a secure configuration and open that stuff up that you actually need. You can create the systems directly in the right zone. You can start with having a zoned environment within your landscape and creating those systems in the right network zones. So this is really, you have the chance to address it, and so that's a really, really good thing. And something that we should take advantage of, because it's not often that these sort of situations come around. So you can address ABAP basis security, zoning, and all these other security configurations that you already wanted to do within your landscape. We have some lesser known topics that become really, really, really important. For example, HTTP access, something that we are oftentimes not that familiar with. But these topics become now really, really important, and we have to familiarize ourselves with it. And sometimes we even have some sort of new architectures, for example, with our HANA Cockpit 2.0, where we suddenly have some XSA in our landscape, some Cloud Foundry-based architecture. And yeah, we also have some other new stuff. For example, the authorizations for Fiori-based environments are to some extent new. So there is some new stuff, but the good news is you can address a lot of the stuff that you always wanted to address, and a lot of the knowledge that you already have is something that's still valid with S4. And this S4 project gives us a chance of finally implementing it and doing a lot of the new stuff as well, and getting familiar with that one as well. That's it basically from my side, from the presentation. And so we now have the chance, or you now have the chance to to ask questions. Is there any topic that you said that you say, oh, we should dig deeper into that? You have a specific question to some specific setup? I think we have 8 people in the call besides Ian and me. So you can just, I don't know, Ian, I think they can unmute themselves, right? So you can unmute yourself and then, just pose your questions. Feel free to take that chance. Fire away. Hey. Either everyone is so afraid, or can you actually unmute yourself? Do you have the chance to, or otherwise you can also put your questions into the chat. You know, the last few times we did this, we usually get some questions regarding where can one learn all this stuff. This is usually well, with HTTP and all these new things, just keep an eye out within the open internet. So this is usually publicly available information. So you should familiarize yourself with RFCs, with the specifications. You can read blogs and articles about this. You should keep to some extent up to date with the developments in the browser world. So usually there are some channels that will tell you, yeah, this is something new coming around with the new version of Chrome. This and that happens. Mozilla finally implemented this and that. So So that is usually something that's that is quite helpful. Apart from that, if you want to start with ABAP security and ask yourself, okay, where should I begin with this big ABAP stack? The recommendation is usually to go to the security baseline concept. SAP or the DSAG also has some sort of recommendations regarding the secure configuration of AS ABAP systems. So this is usually these are usually the starting points that I would recommend to get into more details regarding the different security topics that we have here.
Tobias, at this time, we're still showing no questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to ask Tobias a question, please go into the Q&A section at the bottom of Zoom and type your question there. Tobias, we're still showing no questions.
Yeah. Maybe everyone is so afraid of all this stuff. So if there are no questions at the moment, that's completely fine for me as well. Oh, there's one hand. So Richard put up his hand, but you can. I think now you should be able to unmute yourself, right?
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Oh.
I think everybody's a little bit shy to ask questions. But now maybe I can break the silence. I have one question, which is something about security, I think, and about Chrome. I've read a note about that Chrome 80 and the new Edge, which also contains the same engine, Chromium. That they have after the 80 version, they are not allowing from JavaScript that you can call some extra functions on closing the browser, and this is a function that SAP was heavily built on. For example, their logout functionality. What do you think? So this is about unterminated backend sessions. So what is the best practice to let us or use the SAP functions for logging out from the system?
Yeah,
because of these new features.
Yeah. So the first thing that that you definitely should look out for is in these notes. There are updates for different frameworks within the ABAP environment or within the SAP environment, where that are using different logout functionalities. So yes, there were some. I think it was logout via pop-up. So there was some very specific logout mechanism, and they changed those logout mechanisms in several different frameworks. So if you do an upgrade or an update of the framework, in many of those cases, those logout procedures actually are switched over to some functionality that is still valid, is still there. So this is the first thing, to update your environment. The other thing that I would always recommend is to look out for session timeouts and set the session timeouts to feasible parameters. Something that's reasonable in your environment, because if you have users that are actually clicking on the close button within your or on the logout button within your framework, then you have really great users, and you should thank them every day for clicking the logout button. But most of the users just hit the X and then the browser is gone, and so depending on the framework, you won't even have any session termination. And so in that to that capacity, set your timeout parameters to reasonable values. I know that this is sometimes hard, especially if you have like long-running technical interfaces, and then you have some user sessions on the same host. So yeah, it's not always that easy and trivial, but those would be the two parameters, or the two things that I would look out for.
Okay, so we faced this issue when we were from the Launchpad. We were issuing applications like WebDimpros or Web GUIs from different backend systems, and when they close, and these stuff came up in the pop-up window, as you described. And when we close these pop-up windows, those sessions that were opened on that backend system was not closed after only the timeout happened.
Yeah.
And previously, when Chrome was enabled this logout event, then it was possible to close immediately those sessions. But there is no other locking mechanism that SAP can use other than just tighten the timeout.
Unfortunately, no. The HTTP sessions don't have any sort of keep alive usually, so there's no communication running back and forth. And so if a user closes the browser, we just have to get notified in some capacity from the browser, and we have to rely on the browser mechanisms to send us some sort of event that says, hey, the user just closed the browser. So we're actually relying on the functionality from the browser manufacturers there, and we're dependent on that. And from a backend perspective, you can only say, yeah, he didn't talk to me long enough. Now I'm going to throw him out.
I see. So the only way is to force the users to click on the logout button. That's the only way. To immediately close the sessions.
Yeah, that would be the other option. But I know too many users. I don't think, even when I look at myself, I usually don't click the logout button.
Okay, thank you very much for answers.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much for breaking the ice. Okay, does anyone else have any sort of question?
Just to remind everybody that's watching on the replay and also people live now on our session today, if you do have a question for Tobias, if you follow the TechEd and SAP HANA tags that I will put in the description of our video, you can ask questions there. So again, Tobias, we are not showing any questions. So if I may close, is that okay with you?
Yeah, that works for me as well.
Perfect. Lovely, thank you. So yeah, as I mentioned, you can go to the resources that you can see on the screen. I'll make sure that these links are in the description below. At this time, again, I thank you everybody for attending today. And Tobias, on our attendees' behalf, may I thank you for presenting today. And everybody, please keep safe and have a great day.